It's these other things. Identity theft happens because the fraudster somehow gets a hold of your PII, personally identifiable information. Now, I know you know this, but I'm going to take a basic approach here to describe what's going on. So we as humans, we actually have a computer, right, in our head, our brains, and our brains tell us how to interact with people. But first, we have to use our senses to figure out who to interact with, right? So, I mean, often this is done visually, right? You see a person, oh, okay, that's John. Okay, I know what to say to John and ask him about the football game or something. I don't know. And then there's Jane, and oh, there's Jane. I don't know. Jane may not be interested in football. I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't want to be, gender conformist here, but it might be that Jane's interested in something else. So let me ask Jane something, right? That's what you do. Or you pick up the phone. Oh, that's mom. Hey, mom, can I borrow some money, right? Or maybe you walk into your dorm room and, oh, I smell something. That must be Joe, right? Or something like that. So you use your senses to know, okay, how to interact with that person. Computers are the same, but they don't have, these wonderful senses that you have. Instead, they have to work with information. And so you're gonna have to give the computer information so they'll know how to interact with you. Oh, this person is giving this user ID and this password. Oh, he has $1 million. Oh, this person is giving this user ID and this password. Oh, this is Rod. Okay, he's got no money in his account. this type of thing. So there are generally this may change. I don't see how, but I think these are always going to be the three ways of how a computer can identify a person. We can call them three dimensions. And so it's something right? Something in your head, passwords, answering questions. Something you are, so that's going to be biometric data. Something that just is a part of you physically, so your fingerprints, your facial composition, your voice, your DNA. I didn't put your retinal display or your iris here, but that could fit in there too. That's something that you are. And in fact, of all of these, I believe that it's DNA, which is very hard to use at this point, and then iris recognition. I feel like I'm saying that incorrectly, but it's using your iris to identify you. Those are the most accurate, whereas voice, fingerprints, and facial composition are less so. And then something you own. It could be a key fob, which is what I use to get into a gym, a credit card, or a mobile phone. Okay, now these are all ways of identifying a person. They distinguish you from someone else. Some things are very good at doing this. So we would say that DNA is excellent at distinguishing two people. Something you own is usually good, unless something has been stolen. Like I have my key fob, and so that unless I give it to someone else, that's going to distinguish me from someone else who doesn't have a key fob. Some things are not as good, right? So passwords could be good, but people can crack them, and fingerprints are always a little iffy, right? So it's often the case that you have to combine PII, more ways of authenticating, so that you can be sure that, or I shouldn't say you, the computer can be sure that the person who is trying to interact with the server is who they say they are. And so I moved the slide. I wish I would have kept it here. So I'll just kind of talk about it. Two-factor authentication is when you're using two of these dimensions. So if you are trying to log into ODU's system, at this point, we're using two factors. We're using something which is going to be a password, a user ID, this type of thing. And then something that you own, which is going to be your phone. And then you can then, push the duo thing and, okay, it's you. Here are your bad grades or something. So that's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to identity theft. They want your PII so that they can be you. All right, so let's move on to phishing. Phishing is sending deceptive communications. emails, text messages, and instant messages. I'm sure that there's more ways, but they're doing this deception to obtain PII. It's all about social engineering. And so on the right here are 3 bullet points. Every time there's a new way of sending these deceptive communications, you have to describe it, right? So phishing is usually with the emails. Vishing is with voice because of the V, phone voice, so vishing. And then smishing is SMS, smishing. It's text or direct messages. So with phishing, I mean, the idea with phishing, which is the original, way that we thought about it until we decided to, talk about it in these different ways, phishing, smishing. The idea is that you just send out a mass of emails, and someone, it's like someone, you're just throwing your hook in the water, and maybe a fish comes along and they take the bait, right? But spear phishing, which I don't put here, cybersecurity students probably have talked about this already, is when you craft something specifically for a smaller group of people or even one person. The analogy would be that you're making a spear. You're not just throwing your hook in the water now, and you're gonna actually hurl that spear at a specific fish that's passing by, right? So this is phishing, and it's all about social engineering. I'll show this in class. It's an example of phishing. This site is very good, National Cybersecurity Alliance, and so they have these, really well produced videos that talk about cybersecurity, and this would be one. Phishing is a part of a process or system. It's a means to an end. So we've been talking about identity theft. So phishing would be a way to steal someone's identity and then hack into a system. Doesn't always have to be that way. You know, I guess it actually does. So it always leads to hacking, because technically, by the word of the law, if you have someone's user ID and password, and even though you can get in because you have authorization, it's not you. So you're still hacking in. So if you were caught doing this process here, then you could have charges of identity theft and hacking brought upon you. So it's usually a part of a system. I'm going to try and describe this. At this point in the evolution of cybercrime, this is getting a little bit old, but I still think it's interesting, and maybe it's appearing. This is something that occurs on the dark net, and maybe it's appearing in other spaces on the dark net that I don't know of. But the places that I used to go to no longer exist. They've been taken down by the FBI. But I'll describe what's going on here. Now, suppose you have a successful phishing attempt, and let's say somehow you were able to, remember, it's a process, right? So you hack into, you take in the identity of a lead administrator at Bank of America, and you use that identity to gain access. You hack into the system now, and you gain access to 1 million credit card numbers and what is that, CVV numbers or CV2 numbers, the things on the back of the card. You get this information. Okay. Now you got 1 million. Okay. Well, you can't possibly use all of those numbers. So what you might do is you use a few, because the time is ticking. Eventually, Bank of America is going to know that there's been a breach, and so they're going to alert their customers to change their credit cards or change their passwords or something. So, okay, time is ticking. You want to monetize what you've done. So a strategy would be to take a few credit cards, get as much money as you can, and then sell the rest of the PII online. So given that rationale, an ecosystem set up. Now, this is coming from your text, and the text would probably describe it if what I'm saying here is going to be a little unclear. But the idea is that coders work to somehow create it doesn't always have to be coders, actually. It doesn't have to be, but coders create something, malicious software often, that helps the fraudster steal PII. So I'm going from top to bottom. You got coders, and so they help the fraudsters with the technical aspects of it. Then you got someone like Brett Johnson who puts that into play using malicious software or just social engineering. Okay. So then they steal PII. Once that happens, they go to an intermediary or broker. That's going to be a carding market, which he talked about in his video, and I'm going to show an example of it, in a minute. So he's got all this. He's now completed. He's done the phishing attempt or social engineering attempt. He's got the PII. So he goes to this carding market and he sells them to buyers. So you got the flow of goods going from top to bottom. The cash flow goes from bottom to top. The buyers are going to sell to the fraudsters, but the carding market gets a transaction fee. And so the fraudsters gets the bulk of the money, actually. And then the fraudsters also use that money to pay coders for future work, right? So the flow of goods, the goods here being the PII, goes down, the cash flow goes up. So you may say, all right, what's this intermediary here? What's this? The internet changes so quickly. 2 years ago, I was standing up in front of some students. I think it was in the business department. They had some kind of conference or something, and I was explaining carding markets. And I was able to go that morning onto Wall Street Market, which you find through Tor, and just kind of play with the site, take some screenshots, and then show them. Well, this site's done. This has been taken down by the FBI. But this is a carding market. Someone started this website and made it possible for fraudsters and buyers to meet. And then you can pause this and you can kind of look at it if you want. I won't spend so much time on this. In the top right corner, you'll see that I created an account. It's called Rozer. It wasn't a really good account. I mean, if you're from Britain, then you know that Rozer is slang for a cop. But I wasn't trying to buy anything, and I wasn't trying to be that deceptive. I just wanted to start an account, so I called myself Rozer. But that gave me access to all these things that are being sold. And I went through the initial stages of buying something. So the vendor was EU Carter, and the product being sold was FBI hacking tools. Maybe in here is some way to do a phishing attempt. I don't know. And this is how all markets generally work. So if you can see on the screen, somewhere in the middle, towards the top, you're going to see the vendor name, EU Carter. And then you're going to go down a few columns or rows, I should say, and you're going to see multi-signature escrow. Okay, this is how the vendor makes their money. So what'll happen is I will say I want to buy these FBI hacking and forensic tools from EU Carter. So it works in different ways, but let's just assume that this is one way it would work. So, okay, then the vendor will contact EU Carter and say, all right, send the goods to me. Oh, no. I don't think it quite works that way. Let me back up a little bit to make sure that I'm giving the best example that I can. So, all right, you got the vendor, and he tells EU Carter, okay, send the goods directly to me. That would be Rozer. And then when you get those, when Rozer tells me that he's gotten those goods, then I will give you the money. Now, this is a guaranteed transaction. So if it happens that I cheat in some way and I don't send any money to the owner of this site, then the owner will still pay EU Carter. So it's only like 20 bucks anyway, and then ban me, of course. But he guarantees the transaction, right? So that's one way. There are other ways, but that's one way. And so he guarantees that transaction, and he gets a cut of anything that's sold. It's actually a pretty good system. So to wrap this up, phishing is a part of a process. It's a part of a system, and you've just seen one way that it occurs.